explore and develop some ideas that we looked at in the previous video. So in the previous video, we looked at how we could find a side length if we were given some angle and one other side length. So let's take this scenario at the start. If we had this situation, the first thing that I encouraged us to do was to first of all label the sides of our triangle. I introduced some new labels in the last video where we'd look opposite the angle and we'd call that O. Our hypotenuse would be our longest side and it is opposite the right angle. And our final side is adjacent and it's next to the angle. Once we have labelled our triangle, what I asked us to do was first of all think about what values we have. We have an opposite, which we need to find, and a hypotenuse. So we should know that straight away we could rewrite this as sine theta is my opposite over my hypotenuse. So from here, what I can do is I can substitute in the values that I have. Sine of 30 is going to be equal to my opposite, which is x, divided by my hypotenuse, which is 10, and then we'll have to do some rearrangement. The rearrangement is dependent on where the x is, whether it is the numerator or the denominator. As x is the numerator, what I'm going to do is say that x is going to be equal to 10 multiplied by sine 30. So in this scenario, my x would be equal to 5, because sine 30 times by 10 is 5. Okay, the idea I want to introduce to us now is we could still use some formula like this, but if I had a side length of 10 and a side length of 5 and I wanted to work out what this angle was, I can still do this. And the reason I can still do this is I can label my side again, so I'd have my adjacent, I'd have my hypotenuse, and I'd have my opposite. So when I'm looking at what formula I need, it is going to be the same one as I looked at previously, of sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, except for my substitutions are going to be slightly different. My substitutions this time, I'm going to have sine of theta still, because I don't know what it is. However, I know my opposite and hypotenuse is 5 over 10. So looking at this, my goal is to now try and find what sine is. For my first scenario, I was dividing by 10, so when I rearranged that, I could multiply it by 10. We call that an inverse operation. Likewise, if I had something like x plus 10 equals y, I could get x on my own by subtracting 10. Again, an inverse operation. So we need to think of an inverse operation for sine. Now, on your calculator, if you press the shift button or the second ND button, you will be able to find the inverse operation for sine. You will see that there's a button for sine, and when you shift click it, we get a sine to the negative 1. That is the inverse operation. We also get that for cos and tan. They both have inverse operations, which is cos to the negative 1 and tan to the negative 1. Now, currently at GCSE, you just need to know what these values are in terms of what these functions can do to help us out with our rearrangement. So, if I apply the sine to the minus 1 to this function here, that cancels out with the sine on the left-hand side, and I end up with sine to the negative 1 of 5 over 10. I would just type this onto my calculator, and I would get an answer of theta to be 30 degrees. So, what I'd like you to do is have a practice at this. So here I've got 6 questions, and I want you to find the values of the angle labelled in each one. So A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then, if you pause the video, I'll shortly go through the answers in a second. So, thank you for pausing it. The answers, well, this first one is going to be the inverse cos of 9 over 13. We would just work that out as the inverse cos 9 divided by 13 on our calculator, and we'd get an answer of 46.2. For the next one, we would have the inverse tan of 5 over 14, and we'd end up with 19.7. For the next one, we'd have the inverse of sine of 11 over 18, and we'd end up with 37.7. Sorry, 7. The next one, we've got opposite and hypotenuse, so it's inverse sine again, and we'd end up with 43.6 for our angle. This one, we've got opposite and adjacent, so it's the inverse tan, and it's of 5.1 over 3.8. It's opposite over adjacent, so this is 53.3. And finally, the last one is cos, because it's adjacent and hypotenuse, so it's inverse cos of 4.6 over 9.3, which is 60.4. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know or come and find me. But thank you very much for watching.